Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing a deck guide. This time it's going to be over an oldie but a goodie, Chromatic Black. So this deck was originally created by Ali Eldrazi. He's another Magic the Gathering streamer. I highly recommend him. Does a bunch of good brews. So this particular list is set up for historic best of one. What we're going to be going over today is how the deck functions, good matchups, bad matchups, and what the sideboard is used for. Since this is best of one, we don't actually sideboard, but what we pull from the sideboard with Mastermind's acquisition, which says choose a card you own from outside of the game and put it into your hand. That's errated as the sideboard in tournament play on MTG Arena, FNM, etc. That's how that ruling works. So we're going to be going over what to grab from the sideboard kind of when, and we're going to have one or two gameplay highlights toward the end of the video. If you guys just want to see the gameplay, there's going to be a timestamp down below. You can just click and jump right to the gameplay. There'll also be an exportable list down below where it'll link you to AetherHub, and you can just click export and then just play the deck if you don't want to listen to all of the explanations and stuff. That being said, let's dig into the list. So what do we do with the list? Typically speaking, early turns we want to develop mana with Mind Stone and Chromatic Lantern. This is also a key part of the deck. This is one of your best cards to start with. Like, you almost mulligan for this card. Not typical, like if you have like, you know, some removal like Heartless Act, if you got a sweeper, because typically there's a lot of aggro in best of one like goblins, for example, and you really want Cry, you really want Languish against those decks, but you also want cheap artifacts that ramp you. And Chromatic Lantern is important because it says lands you control have add 1 mana of any color. Golos says tap, I think this is 7 mana, 5, 6, yeah, 7, but it has to be one of each color. So this enables us to use Golos's ability. And Golos, when he comes in, you can search your library for a land card and put it into play. Typically speaking, you can grab Kobold Stronghold just because you need at least one to ramp, like to super ramp. Once you start getting 5 swamps on the field, this is profit for mana. You go up. Now sometimes you won't be able to Kobold Stronghold and use Golos's activated ability. You're gonna have to figure that out, like get a feel for how much mana you need for what, and if you need to manually tap for stuff. It's a very intricate deck in that sense. Like knowing when to manually tap to like click on lands and then add certain colors, instead of just letting the auto tapper take over for you. So just consider how many spells you're going to cast, all of that stuff, and then do your sequencing. Okay. So also Golos, the other thing about Golos is that you can grab Bojuka Bog with him. So if your opponent's a reanimator list, if they want to toss a bunch of cards into their graveyard and then resurrect them, that deck's been a little popularized actually because of Ali, who also made this deck. There's a new reanimator deck rolling around. So Bojuka Bog's really important here. Originally I didn't want to add Bojuka Bog or like Castle Lochwain or anything else because it dilutes the amount of raw swamps we have in the deck, which means Kobold is less useful. So if you're noticing, like, it's going to take you a lot of sample sizes, but if you're worried about it, if you think about it, you can actually go like this and then up the number of swamps and just have 3 strongholds, because really you just need 1 eventually, and you can usually fetch it with Golos if you need to. And then if you don't need the bog, you can do that. So I would say make that minor change if you're worried about the number of swamps. I'm probably actually going to stick with this too, but we'll see. So typically speaking, ramp, and then you start to go like Kobold Stronghold, float for like 7 mana or 8 mana or whatever, cast Masterminds with 4 of that, and then you grab like something from your sideboard. Like if you're up against like goblins, sometimes you get Necromentia versus Muxus, so they can't just combo off. Grafdiggers is kind of good, but the problem with it is that it doesn't stop them from casting Muxus. So they will eventually just raw cast Muxus as like a 4/4 haste, and that can sometimes kill you, especially if they have banner effects up, like all goblins get +1/+1. Like, it's still a okay creature. Obviously not as powerful as it usually is if it can get all of the stuff off the top of the library, but it can still wreck you. So more times than not, you're going to want to Necromentia that. If you can, if you have a free turn. That's a very aggressive deck, so you usually have to board wipe and then Necromentia, you know, on a good turn when they're still trying to redevelop. So Maze Mind's a bit of life gain, that's kind of nice. Vraska's a one of. Keep in mind that you can Masterminds to your library as well. So if you need to exile like an opposing Ulamog or something, you can Vraska's Contempt it. Another cheap answer to Ulamog, and this is something I didn't realize for a minute, is that you can, if it's their only creature, if Ulamog is their only creature, you can go Innocent Blood. Sacrifice gets around the indestructible keyword. So that's a 5 mana answer to Ulamog instead of a 9 mana answer if you go to Mastermind for it, because Mastermind is 4, and then 4 for Vraska, so that's 8 mana to get rid of Ugin. If they have just one creature and you don't think they can Shark Typhoon or something, this is a safe bet. Or if you just don't have the mana and you have no other options, it's nice. So that pretty much goes over how the deck functions for the most part. You've got Ugin, also Golos, like the effect that he has. We talked about how to activate it. I didn't really go over what it does. So exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn without paying their mana cost. Huge. Sometimes this is just a land, man. Sometimes we whiff, even though we only have 25 lands. But the moment you hit like Mastermind's acquisition off of this, you feel so good, man. It's so awesome. You just are like, boop, and then you go to your sideboard, grab another card. And if you hit this off of 7 mana, sometimes you have extra floating mana because of like Cobalt Stronghold or whatever else. And you're able to actually cast the Necromentia for Muxus, Necromentia for whatever, basically. If you're in the mirror matchup, Mastermind's acquisition every single time, okay? If you think they're on mono black, like Chromatic Lantern, you see the Cobalt Strongholds, you see the Swamp, they're either going to be running Karn, the Great Creator, or Masterminds, and 9 times out of 10, like almost every time, it's going to be Masterminds. That being said, you can change this list to be like more toward Karn, like you can split the Masterminds and put like 1 Karn in. That way, and then you can still have some artifacts in your sideboard, like you'll still be able to grab Spyglass and Immortal Sun and stuff, but you would have to take out some of these tech cards that are creatures or non-creatures for artifacts, if you want that to be more real. So you sacrifice the consistency of being able to answer multiple situations or being able to skyrocket yourself into card advantage, etc. Like if you take out the Ulamog from the sideboard of the Zakama, don't take out the Zakama. That's not allowed. And in all the Eldrazi list, you have to keep this guy in. He's just awesome. Anyway, like you can do that to give yourself another way to produce card advantage from your sideboard and to get back into the game. If your opponent Necromentias you. This is a lot of like, you know, very minor situations that might not, like not really minor, but rare situations that might pop up. So just keep that in mind. I tend to overthink a lot on my matchups, so that's something I've got to work on as well. So we've got a lot of one-ofs like Ulamog, Erebos, just stuff that like Golos, if it hits Ulamog, it's like a free win. And the original list, I think, ran 3 Disfigures instead of 3 Heartless Acts. I gravitated toward Heartless Acts and dropped the Simulacrums for more ramp cards or more like cheaper artifact cards for the early game. I just prefer it. And I switched out 1 Languish for Extinction Event, so Extinction Event can hit weird stuff like Ulamog. It's just nice, man. Like, just to have the options in Best of 1 especially. It is a different format. If you're used to Best of 3, I wouldn't say it's less complex because there are a lot of things that you have to consider, but a lot of your mental like overhead can be focused on different things rather than what am I going to sideboard after this game. You don't have to think about that. Instead, you're like, what can I get from my sideboard to win me this game? And you can kind of focus on that game. You don't have to get fatigued from knowing that you have to do 2 more matches and stuff. So that's a really key difference. So enjoy it if it's your first time jumping in, basically. It's nice. So good matchups, bad matchups, and stuff like that. We should go over that. So Field of the Dead, I think we're slightly favored because the opponent just can't really do much. They can't get going fast enough. We usually have at least 1 or 2 sweepers because we know we can look for them with like Maze Mine, Scrying, Treasure Map Scrying, stuff like that. Also, something to consider with this, I know I'm derailing a lot. There's a lot of information to go over in this complex list. You can set upkeep stops before you draw your card to scry, so that way you can control the card that you're drawing for that turn. This can be important for a few reasons. The main reason is that you can, if you're looking for lands, you can draw a land, and if you're getting flooded, you don't draw into the land because you can put the land on the bottom. That being said, you can still draw into a land even putting them on the bottom, but it's fine. And then you've got treasure maps also where you can set the upkeep, scry before you draw, etc. It just helps you control your draws. It's not always correct to do that. Like if you have a lot of extra mana, you can obviously pay 2 mana and draw the card at the end of your opponent's turn, or during your turn if you need to just draw for the turn and get a land drop anyway. Like if you have an excess amount of lands, like that's fine. But knowing that you can do that to control your draws is super important. So that being said, Field of the Dead, lots of sweepers anyway. Masterminds can go and grab Plague here. I think it's Virulent Plague, but my English is, I'm still working on it, like learning how to pronounce different words and stuff. So, but I think that's pretty correct. So creature tokens get -2/-2. It just kills all the Field of the Dead tokens. It's super free. And typically speaking, they can't like Teferi 3S anymore, because normally they'd be able to like Teferi -3, maybe play another Teferi +1 Scape Shift. And I know that's a really specific example. I mean, I guess you'd just play the Plague again anyway, like Teferi 3 doesn't really stop you. So they have to have like ECD on this basically at that point, which is a little rare. I don't think Field of the Dead typically runs 5 mana cards like that. They run like a bunch of ramp and Ugin or something. I guess if they Ugin and minus, it could be rough, but anyway, it usually buys you enough time to just go over the top and like Ulamog hardcast, which will allow you to exile 2 permanents. So you just exile their Field of the Deads, start exiling their other planeswalkers, etc. And you have enough answers to planeswalkers with masterminds and contempt and stuff anyway, so it's not too bad. Goblins are rough. I would say goblins are probably 45% in our favor. Like, we have a 45% chance to win most of the time. If they go first, it might get knocked down to about 40. It just depends. It's a really hard matchup to gauge because it's so spiky sometimes. Sometimes you feel powerless to, the ringleaders refilling their hands after you Cry of Carnarium, the Muxus coming down after you languished. Like, it's just a lot to... it's just a lot to keep up with, all right? That's pretty much it. So don't be too discouraged if you queue into goblins like 2 or 3 times, kind of lose a bit. You can win that matchup, just be patient, learn the matchup, and enjoy playing Magic, man. Don't sweat it. If someone's... And don't harbor... Well, this is me just preaching now. I try not to harbor ill feelings toward people who are playing lists because they're still people. It's really hard to remember that the person sitting across from you on MTG Arena is a real person. And they just want to play Magic too, man. And if they're just going for quick wins, that's the strat. And we can't hate them for it that much. You can get a little frustrated, but don't hate them. That's important. So getting back to the matchups, we've got Gobos. Aggro in general, like Rule or whatever else, is pretty okay too. Just make sure to sweep when you can and make sure the timing's right. Like, there are some situations in which like I should have languished, but I held off because I think they might play a questing beast and then I get ember cleaved, and that's hard to deal with. So just board wipe if you think they can ember cleave, and then if they have the questing beast, we teched Heartless Act for that, so you can kind of come back. So just keep those plays in mind. What else is popular in Historic? It's like Reanimator, which we do okay against because of the Bajuka Bog now. It's pretty even. Combo decks like Omni Wish and such are really rough. Those are like a coin flip though, because we're sort of like a combo deck like that as well with Masterminds and such. So we can like Masterminds for their Burial Rites or their whatever, like Masterminds acquisition, so they can't go off either. That's pretty much the sideboard tech for that. Usually they have 2 Fae of Wishes, 2 Masterminds, so like even if you get the Mastermind, sometimes they still go off. Might be good to get the Eerie Ultimatum instead. It's really hard to gauge that matchup, man. But just exile their graveyard when you can with Golos, Bajuka Bog. They don't run counter spells unless it's in their sideboard, so don't worry about that. Plus the Omni-Wish is more of a best of 3 deck, so they don't have to deal with goblins as much. We typically pack more sweepers than they do, so yeah, I think that is most of the popular matchups for Historic. There's probably a few that I'm missing. But typically speaking, I don't feel powerless aside from like goblins. Like sometimes the goblins are bad, and that's about it. But I think that goes for any deck playing Magic the Gathering. Even like Jeskai control with like Clarions and stuff, I think struggle versus goblins just because they can refill their hands. So what are the sideboard cards useful for? So Innocent Blood, like big creatures like Questing Beast or Ulamog especially, being able to make them sack things. This is also decent against mono blue with how they have like Siren Storm Tamer sometimes, or they might be packing like dive downs and stuff. This gets around those cards like dive downs. Graph Diggers, decent against Muxus, good against Kethis. This is almost like a free win against Kethis now, especially since they can't Teferi 3 bounce this anymore. Kethis is still around. That's another matchup. I think we do okayish against Kethis. We just have to be able to sweep the board with Languish or Extinction Event and get Bojuka Bog helps that matchup a lot for sure. So making that shift toward Bojuka Bog helps that matchup. Elder Spell, your opponent plays a bunch of Planeswalkers, pretty straightforward. Spyglass, opponent has like something that you don't want to deal with. Like even if you sacrifice your own Eugene, sometimes that's okay to make sure that the Field of the Dead decks can't like wreck you with it. So this is sometimes good against that. Necromentia, we've already gone over that. Like, you know, get Field of the Dead, get Mastermind's Acquisition in the mirror matchup, get Muxus for mono red if it's safe to cast, etc. This Field of the Dead. Extinction Event, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like if you need this, get it. Like it can be really useful against creature decks. It can be useful if you've already used, like if they have multiple creatures, you can't Innocent Blood the Ulamog. So if you've already used your Vraska's Contempt or it got milled over, grabbing this can be like an 8 mana answer to Ulamog, 4 for the Masterminds, 4 for this. Baneslayer, decent against red. It's an okay clock. A lot of people ask me why I don't use Dream Trawler. It's because it's 1 more mana usually. Because being able to go 4 for Mastermind and then 5, 9 is easier to hit than 10. And the hexproof usually isn't that useful. Like decks can usually answer Dream Trawler in similar ways that they can Baneslayer, like Shark Typhoon and such. So it doesn't really matter either way, I don't think there. Cleansing Nova, you can blow up all artifacts and enchantments or creatures here. So this is versatile because if your opponent has a lot of stuff that's locking you out of what you want to do, like Spyglasses, etc., then you can do this and clear the board of artifacts and enchantments or creatures, which is nice. Massacre Worm, this can sometimes OTK Field of the Dead decks, and it's hilarious. Other times it might just be good against Sakdos. This is also good against Sakdos still, like because Cat Oven players are coming from Standard to play in Historic because their cats are banned in Standard. People who want to play the cats will still come and play, you know? So that's sort of insurance against that as well. Thought Distortion, really good against just U-White control, just really, really slow lists like Esper, stuff like that. Rely on like Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, and counter spells to get there. So sometimes they'll tap out for Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. You can then Mastermind's Acquisition, deal with their board state. And then sometimes, like with the amount of mana that we have, we can sometimes Thought Distortion and then do something like Contempt after to get rid of the Teferi, or swing it down with, you know, Golos, and they're planning to use like a Seal Away on our Golos to save their dude. So you can play around that. Immortal Sun, good against Planeswalker decks, weak against ECD. Bedevils, stuff like that. So against Grixis, this is pretty weak because it's a 6 mana card that gets blown up by Bedevil. But there are times for it, and it's just a very powerful card. When you need it, it will feel good. Zakama, there's a whole meme of Ali Eldrazi screaming Zakama at the top of his lungs when he played it, back when he was originally doing Mastermind lists. The meme is real and I still love it. I haven't gotten the courage to yell it at the top of my lungs yet because I have roommates and such, but one of these days I'll get it done. What he does is you can float all of your mana as you go to cast him, and this is important because he untaps all of your lands. So you float all of your mana, and then you can blow up target artifacts or enchantments. So if you're in the mirror matchup and you can't quite Banefire to kill them, then you can instead destroy all of their engines like Maze Mind Tomes, Mind Stones, you know, treasure maps if they have those, etc. And chromatic lanterns especially, just to turn them off from that. And then you have a 9/9 that's really hard to deal with. Their only answer to it is in the original list, because other lists are running disfigure still because they're just net decking, they're not adjusting their list. This is adjusted. So you can like Heartless Act this. If I am against the Zakama, I can Heartless Act, but they only have like Extinction Event maybe if they didn't. This isn't even in the original list. It's like 3 Languish. So like unless they get their Vraska's Contempt or Masterminds, then they can't deal with it. So it's just really nice. Obviously you want to Necromentia their Masterminds so they can't Masterminds for an answer to this, but that's fine. Ulamog, just awesome, like exile target Field of the Dead, exile big planeswalkers, win the game because it's indestructible and it's hard to deal with in the mirror. Exile their chromatic lanterns, exile whatever you want, and then just win. Like, he's so strong. And Banefire, obviously, like if you can float enough mana with the Kobold Strongholds and then keep 1 back with your chromatic lantern for red, and you need red for Banefire and Zakama and these two. But other than that, it can be lethal sometimes. Just do the math out before you mastermind for it. And like consider something as a closing note before we jump into the gameplay here. Consider your opponent's ability to mess with your hands as you go to mastermind. Can they Necromentia you in response? Do they have enough mana for that if you're in the mirror? Is it likely that they're running Thought Erasure? Do you still have to go for it? Like, what if they just Thought Erasure your masterminds anyway? Like, you know, things to consider. If you have 2 masterminds especially, like, what do you really do? You can mastermind for the card that you want, and then they're forced to pick between mastermind and the card that you fetched. And is that card that you fetched necessary to win? Or can you do something else? Because if you go to fetch it and then it gets discarded, what are you going to do? You can't mastermind for that card again because it's gone. You only have 1 copy of it in your sideboard, so stuff to consider. It's really, really complex. So that being said, I've got 2 matches coming up here. I think I'm going to do 1 or 2 here, depending on the length of this. And yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoy the gameplay. Hopefully that explanation gives you some light into how the deck is played. Having 1 more land, but like with how much we've been getting flooded, rough. Okay, nice. Yeah, it is something to learn from, yes, absolutely. Okay, so they're probably on Esper or U-White ramp, U-White control. We're basically doing the same stuff. Just ramping into obnoxious stuff. They probably have counter spells though, which is annoying, but we can fight through them. Not always the worst. Double Mind Stone's very strong. They probably counter this. No? Nice. We too have the nuts, dude. Teferi. I think I just Golos. I could try to Masterminds, I guess. They might let this go through so they can Teferi tuck it. Cycling for 3. That means I want a regular swamp so that we can get the swamps up. In order to make Kobold Stronghold worth it, we just need 1 more swamp for that. And I can do Golos now. If they let me untap with it, it's like, it's GG. But I think they just have an Elspeth's untap some lands. They can also Field of Ruin my Kobold, which actually will help me at this point. Yeah, Black Castle as a one idea could be really good. Because sometimes we are just flooded. It does hurt the swamp count though. It does hurt. So what you're saying is you're letting me untap with Golos. What you're saying, right? Negate? Okay. Alright. Can dig it. This is probably going to get sealed away if I swing in.
What was your name again? I've seen so many of them come. Want me just play pretend?
What are the chances of seal away? Are they? They're super high in blue-white, yeah?
Same old thing that keeps me keen, but I just wanna be alone with you. Just wanna be alone with you. Same old thing that keeps me around. If you wanna come around, baby, it's cool. And if you wanna fuck around, baby, I do. Just wanna be alone with you.
Stop calling me that.
I'll let them Field of Ruin that. And thanks for the follow, man. I appreciate it. Second Son Azure, yeah, they're prepping it. And that Teferi's almost ulted. I probably should have swung at it anyway, to be honest. Because if they're sitting on a counter spell or two, I'm pretty much toast. At this rate. Probably through by not attacking there. The problem is if I go to do this, if I do this, can I still Golos? I think I can, right? And then I can still have more mana open. Then they have a counter spell, of course. And if they seal this away, we're really sad. But we need to boop this. Has it been winning? Yeah. We're like 2-1 with it right now. Ish. Fuck your Shark Typhoon. Get out of here. Yeah, finally the disfigure is useful. Now if they have seal away, we're really sad, or ECD. Because that's pretty much all of our value. Because what we got with Mastermind was not very good. Get Chadwick for 3, nice. Nice, dude. Nice. What about this though? What about your friend here? How's it going, Anna? Yeah, I agree. I really like the Thought Distortion sideboard, man. An opponent discarded lands too, which is hilarious. Yeah, maybe you should have swamped first. Well, my idea behind this was that I get to activate Golos and play a land off of that, so that's more value. Then I have a swamp for another turn potentially. Actually, I can't do it right now. I have to play the swamp anyway. Yo! 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 I'm gonna tuck the Chromatic Lantern. Mistakes were made. Mistakes were made. So how much mana is this? 8. 16. Oh, 15. I am so good at math. It's exact lethal. Yeah? Narset's reversal would be hilarious. I would take the loss gladly. I'm gonna try to get out of gold with it today, potentially. I had a really late start to today. This looks okay for going first. Like, we've got a Cry against aggro. We've got really good top end in case we flood out. I kind of don't like the idea of not being able to hit Eugene's off of Golos, but other than that, this is fine. Ooh, it's the cat, the kitty cat. Oh my god, I've never seen such a good Cry, dude. Goodbye. Maybe that was preemptive, but it's fine. I think I just curve out here. Chromatic Lantern plus maybe something else next turn. We also have a lot of swamps for Stronghold now. Yeah, they're begging for cards right now. That's desperation. That's what desperation looks like, in case you guys were wondering. Right there. Tracking that for like a land. Not even holding that for a Mayhem Devil. Oof. They don't really have any haste, so I'm just going to swing through here. 3, 6, 7. Yeah, we have Eugene online next turn. Goodbye, Trail of Crumbs. Please play Cat again, but not the Oven. Don't play the Oven. So play Cat, Mayhem Devil. Please. Oh, yes, that's even better, actually. I love that. Don't crack that. That's bad. Oh my god, yes. 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 Alright, so hopefully the gameplay and the explanation there on the decks were useful. We have the matchup against U White and Jun Food there. So typically speaking, I like to do 2 or 3 of these deck guides a week, sometimes even more. But I've been trying to put out more deck guides than other content because I think it's better and I can get into it more. Like, I'm more excited to work on the deck guides. If you enjoyed the video, there'll be an end panel here in a second where you can click subscribe. That really helps the channel. And then there's going to be, like, a most recent video, so you can check out some more content if you want to do that. I try to put out a new video every single day, no matter what. I've been pretty inspired by like Covert Go Blue and a few other YouTubers that have been doing that for a while. So if you guys have any questions about the deck, you can feel free to comment down below. And if you don't feel like doing that, you can always drop by my stream. The links are down below, as well as the link to export the list if you haven't done that already. So with that being said, hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and thank you for checking out the video.